my name is Emma, and today I'm talking about Shadowhunters episode 8, 9, what are we even on? I've done too many of these that I've lost count. I'm talking about Shadowhunters again. I sincerely apologize to all of my viewers who aren't fans of the Mortal Instruments or don't watch Shadowhunters, so that's all I've been posting about lately. So if you've stuck with me this long, God bless you. I feel like I don't have a lot to say on this episode. A lot of that could be that I didn't rewatch it. I normally rewatch every single episode of Shadowhunters before I film a review, just in case I missed anything or I didn't write down any notes for something I wanted to talk about. Didn't have the time to. Wasn't really crazy about this episode, so I'm not gonna kill myself over not rewatching it. I do think this episode was better, and a common theme in all my Shadowhunters reviews for now is anything that is an improvement or is good, I just don't have a lot to say about. It's the negative things that I have too much to say about. So this could possibly be a very good thing that I don't have a ton of thoughts for this episode. Overall, I do think it was a better episode compared to a lot of the previous ones, which is a really good thing. Still, nothing is standing out for me, and I'm not gonna say these episodes are great just because they were better than the last. I'm continuing to have TV standards, and just because it's Shadowhunters and it's shit to start with doesn't mean that it's going to be amazing when it's decent. Let's just make that clear. I'm really glad that Shadowhunters has grown into its own TV show. It's definitely easier to say this makes sense for Shadowhunters even though it doesn't make sense to the books. I'm not totally happy that I have to do that, you know what I mean? But I'm able to, which is a good thing, so hopefully I'll be able to eventually totally separate it. But who knows when that'll ever happen, right? The producers have definitely gotten down a specific episode structure for this TV show. It's not all over the place like it used to be. I feel like the pacing did slow down a bit, which is a really good thing in my opinion. Plot lines of episodes are just way more cohesive, and I'm really, really happy about that. Still some massive changes I'm never going to be okay with. There just isn't anything extravagant yet that's making me say, like, I'm really, really love this show, because that's what I need in a TV show. So I'm waiting on that from Shadowhunters. Altogether, this episode was definitely one of the better ones. That's it for the non-spoiler discussion. Let's get into all of the goodies for this episode. First, we start off with this line. The first rule of shadowhunting is, when stuff blows up, keep walking. That was a really stupid line in my opinion. Like, if it was worded better, I would have been more okay with it. It was just very bad wording, and it sounded super mediocre. I did like the part after that where Izzy like swings her whip and catches a cup and is like, a Shadowhunter can do anything and heals. I know I wasn't happy with the way that Izzy was being portrayed in the first couple of episodes. I'm glad we moved out of that and out of that stupid fucking plotline that shouldn't have existed, because I'm much happier with the way that she is now. I feel like emmmabooks is a fantastic Isabel. I'm really happy with the way she looks as Izzy. I feel like she captures her essence really well, and I'm so glad she's improved for me. It was never a problem with Emerald. It was a problem with the way the producers were portraying her, and now we moved past that, and it's a good thing, and it's just complete love for emmmabooks. I also liked the line from Alec when Clary's walking over to him, and like they're talking about how like she's thankful for everything that he's done for her, or something along the lines. I'm probably wrong in saying that because I don't remember anything. Alec says, "Don't misinterpret this as friendship. Since you've arrived, our whole world has turned upside down," and I feel like that's a really, really great line from Alec. It just makes sense because in the books there's such a big wedge between them, and that wedge isn't totally evident in the show. There's still some contempt from Alec, but it's definitely more minimal than it is in the books, and I just feel like that line summed up Shadowhunters Alec really well, which is what I want from the show. They had an actual scene from the book. It wasn't from City of Bones, it was from City of Ashes, but I knew that they were integrating the Simon plotline like from the beginning. So they actually kept in an actual scene from City of Ashes, and I'm so happy with the way they did it. Raphael brings Simon to the Institute as Simon is dead, and he's like, look, you can either make him a vampire or he can die. I'm just so happy that that was accurate. I feel like honestly, this episode is probably the most accurate to the books that we've gotten just because they've done this Simon plotline so well. Honestly, can someone tell me who is creating all these ideas around Simon? Because they're literally always so great and so accurate to the books, and everything else sucks. Whoever is in charge of Simon, you need to expand your expertise to everything else in the show. I see a lot of people complaining that the whole is Simon gonna die or is Simon gonna be a vampire thing that Clary had to decide was dragged out in the show. I do agree with that, but it didn't bother me while watching. I actually really enjoyed those parts of it. I feel like Kat McNamara's acting in this episode was really, really great. Her emotion is just so coming out every single time. She has these scenes where she's just very, very emotional, and I really love that. In the books, Clary was just so so wrecked that this happened to Simon, and I feel like they did a great job at portraying that in the show. Yes, it was dragged out a bit. Yes, Clary was crying every 5 seconds, but I can disregard that because I really enjoyed it. It's probably because it was accurate to the books. So, you know what? I'm okay with it. I really enjoyed all of the portions that had to do with Simon in this episode. Also, I feel that Raphael is more authentic Raphael in this episode. He gets that line that was like, I may be a vampire, but I was raised a good Catholic, and I'm really glad that they included his faith in it, because while it's not like totally significant in the books, it was kind of important in City of Bones, and like I just really liked that they kept that aspect in. He was a little over the top at first, but I've been pretty happy with Raphael in the beginning, and even though I'm really upset that he's not Simon's sire, I do think there's still hope for that relationship. I feel that in the book, Simon and Raphael's relationship isn't primarily based on the fact that Raphael Simon's sire. I feel like it's just the relationship they have with this like mundane turned vampire who's already been involved in the shadow world. Their dynamic is super interesting regardless of that, so I definitely think there's still a way for them to include that in the show. Okay, so Lydia Branwell is introduced. I knew that Lydia Branwell was going to be a character quite a while ago. I wasn't so sure how I was about them introducing these new characters. I still don't think we need more characters, but I'm actually pretty happy with Lydia Branwell. One thing I will say that really bothers me is, why does she change into Valentine to come into the Institute in the first place? Was it a drill from the Cleave? Like, I just feel like there was no purpose that was explained, and I feel like I can't even think of a good reason for it, even if it wasn't explained. There's also the fact that this is a rune now. I remember seeing a picture posted on the internet, whether it was by Shadowhunters or by a fan account, but there's a shot of Lydia with like the rune, I'm pointing to my rune as I say that, with the rune that is like shape-shifting or something that the show created, and they're like, don't trust Lydia Branwell. So I don't know if it's specifically to that scene that they were referring to, or if later in the season like there's going to be a big betrayal by this character of Lydia. If so, that's a really stupid way to foreshadow it because you're blatantly saying it. But the fact that this is a rune that is in the Grey Book, that has been around since the beginning of Shadowhunters, because Clary hasn't invented any new runes yet, and she's the only person that can do that, changes the entire game. And I feel like the writers are going to ignore that, because anything they make canon in the show has just been inconsistent so far. So I'm pretty confident that this is going to be the last time that we show this whole shape-shifting rune. But if this show was written correctly, it would change everything. The fact that Shadowhunters now have a rune that can change them into absolutely anyone, there's no telling what's gonna happen. And I don't mean that in a good way. It would just be utter chaos if everyone could turn into each other at their own will. Like I said, I really don't think Shadowhunters is going to make a big deal out of this, and if they do, it's not going to be to the level that it would if this was actually something that was relevant in the world for all of these years. Like, Valentine could walk into the Institute as anyone and commit all these murders. Valentine could have shapeshifted into the Consul and taken the Mortal Cup, and there would have been no need for a mass killing. He could have just taken it and nobody would have known because they thought it would be the Consul. Changes fucking everything. Also, this rune is just so much more magical than the rest of the runes. Like, the Shadowhunters are always like, no, we don't do magic, and this is straight up magic. Runes don't really do anything except like enhance abilities they already have, and shapeshifting is not something that comes from mundanes or anything like that. I have a big problem with this new plot line that's probably not even a plot line, because really the writers aren't that clever, but I don't like it. Back to Lydia, I do feel like she's a much better actress than a lot of the stars in the show, so I'm interested to see where she's gonna go. I would not mind seeing more from her. I don't like how her last name is Branwell, and I especially don't like the fact that they already focus in on the fact that the Branwells are related to the Fairchilds. First of all, if her last name is going to be Branwell, I don't think they should have emphasized on the fact that like they're cousins. Like, the Branwells and the Fairchilds was really important to the Infernal Devices, so if they're going to leave that in, I would have been fine with it, and like all the fans being like, oh my god, it's a Branwell, and like not actually significantly saying that there's a reason why the fans would be excited. And I just feel like them mentioning the fact that the Fairchilds are related to the Branwells didn't really do anything, you know? Isabel's just like, aren't you and Clary distant cousins? And then like, that was it. You know, if there was like a significant reason as to why they would reveal that the Branwells and the Fairchilds are related, I would have been fine with that. But for now, there's no connection, and I'm just upset that they included that detail and didn't really go anywhere with it. Also, it was such a big deal in the Infernal Devices for Charlotte and Henry to take Charlotte's last name. A woman passing on her maiden name to her child in the 1800s was a big deal in the Infernal Devices, And I just really wish they would have kept that, you know what I mean? I would have been totally cool with it if they had kept the kiss similar to the way it was in the last episode, but they had the Falcon scene beforehand. But now, they take the Falcon scene, they take it out of context, and put it somewhere stupid where it doesn't make sense and nobody enjoys it. I can't even remember where they were and what they were doing. I feel like they were doing something in Simon's house. I don't know why. Or it was after Simon's house or something. But Jace out of nowhere just starts telling the story about how his father got him a falcon and taught him to train it, and when he taught it to love him, the father snapped his neck. And even Clary realizes it and she's like, Jace, why are you telling me this story right now? It was just such bad timing. Like, they could have put it in a different place when Clary and Jace were actually already having a to reveal that side of him, but it was just so random and like not well placed. I also feel like it wasn't sincere. Like, I'm gonna relate it to the movie because I feel like everything about to reveal that the Falcon story and the kiss scene random and perfect. Something about the way that Jamie Bauer portrayed it was just very sincere and authentic, and you could really feel for him. Watching Shadowhunters, I'm just like laughing because it's so awkward and it just doesn't look like he really is affected by that experience. Did anyone else feel that way? And you know, while it was like the same story, the lesson was different, and the lesson was to love is to destroy, and that's a very important part of Valentine being their parents. There are certain lines in the Mortal Instruments that like just draw you back to it, and to love is to destroy is a very, very clear-cut example of that. But now it's like, and it taught me that you need to conceal your emotions. You can't be a shadow hunter and be emotional because it's a distraction. Meanwhile, as Jace is telling the story, he's sniffling like it's no tomorrow, ready to cry, but apparently he never cried again after that time. It was just so stupid. Okay, there's one thing that I really want to touch on that has to kind of go back to like the commercial break thingy I was talking about last time. So right before we go back from a commercial break, we have this really weird sequence. I don't even know what to call this, but basically it's like this weird graphic text moment. It's like 5 seconds long and it says, "You're watching Shadowhunters," and all I could think was just going back a couple years to watching Degrassi on Teen Nick, where they're like, "You're watching Degrassi. Don't go anywhere, we'll be right back." It was exactly from that. I tweeted that out and somebody tweeted to me, "I'm totally expecting Claire to have a wand to draw the angelic rune and be like, 'I'm Kat McNamara and you're watching Shadowhunters.'" It just felt really weird, and especially because they haven't been doing that since season 1. Like, I would have been fine with it, I would have been used to it by now if like that was always before every commercial break. They're like, "You're watching Shadowhunters," or "Don't go anywhere, Shadowhunters will be right back." But it comes out of nowhere halfway through the season, and I'm just like, what are you doing? If you ever watched Degrassi on Teen Nick, you know exactly the sequences before and after a commercial break that I'm talking about. I know you know. So then we get to Alec proposing to Lydia. I have a big problem with this, and it's not just because there's an arranged marriage. I've accepted that. I'm over it. I'm just upset with the way that this happened. First of all, like 10 seconds ago, Alec is like, "Magnus, I'm gonna listen to my heart," which apparently involves pretending to marry Lydia Branwell. Also, up until this point, they've been building up Malik like crazy to the point where it's annoying. We've seen more of Malik in the first 8 episodes of Shadowhunters than we do in the first 3 books of the series. And then they throw in this Lydia Branwell character to marry off Alec, and I feel like the majority of the idea around her was just to create drama around Malik, because the writers are very clearly aware of the fact that the fans love Malik. I said this with Maureen, I don't like characters who aren't characters within themselves and they just serve a specific materialistic purpose in the show, and that's what Lydia Branwell is doing for me right now. I like the girl, I don't like the point around her. Also, for so long leading up to this episode, every time they talked about Lydia Branwell, it's been about this girl who's coming to the Institute to have a marriage with Alec. But like in the episode, there's nothing to suggest that this is the person that the Lightwoods were talking about when they wanted to have Alec marry off for like a political alliance. I just feel like the whole aspect around Lydia Branwell wasn't really well developed, and I feel like had they done more to it and made it more realistic rather than Alec like meeting her for 10 seconds and being like, "Hey, it's a really good idea if we get married for our parents," right? I feel like had they put a little bit more care into this plotline, I wouldn't be as bothered by it. But it's just everything that came beforehand and it's presently happening with this arranged marriage I have a problem with. So then we get to the final scenes when they're in the graveyard and Camille shows up where Raphael, Simon, Jace, and Clary are. I like Camille. She's not Camille in the books, but I like Shadowhunters Camille. I'm really interested with this infatuation she has with Simon because it's not very typical of a vampire to be like that with a mundane. Maybe she just thinks that he's super cute and wants him as like her vampire king, which is actually another character's plotline, but we're gonna move on from that. I just really don't like the way that this scene went. Like, they're talking about how Camille has been feeding on humans and breaking the accords, and like Camille brings her whole posse of vampires, and all of a sudden in like 2 seconds they turn on her. It was just strange to me because the vampires have just always held their clan leader at like such a higher level, and they don't really rebel. Like, it's like the worst thing in the world to vampires to strike against another vampire, and yet they turn on Camille in literally 2 seconds. I understand in the books a lot of them didn't like Camille, but I felt like it was just very unrealistic that like all of a sudden the one time somebody says she's breaking the rules, they're all like, we hate Camille, let's kill her or attack her or remove her of her status. I don't even know what it was because that was not explained well. But also, Clary punches Camille and I'm confused because Clary has had 0 Shadowhunter training. What, did she fight Alec for 5 seconds in one of the episodes and has poked like 3 demons? She hasn't had any actual training. The only strength and abilities that she really has are from the runes. And because they hadn't applied runes in a while and like strength runes fade pretty quickly, it made no sense that she would punch Camille, a vampire who is like rock solid, like marble, would not hurt. I would have liked it so much more if it was like Twilight, where she punches him and is like crying because she broke her hand. Would have been much better, and I would have liked the scene more if I could laugh a little bit at it. But I'm also just looking at it like, why? Another thing that Christine said that I totally agree with is that this is like the oldest vampire we know of. Like, Clary could not come within 2 feet of Camille if Camille didn't want her to, so I don't understand how she would just stand there while Clary punches her. It's just not consistent with the story at all. I did really love the ending scene where Alberto rises from the ground and he's a vampire. Again, I just feel like it was really consistent with the books and more consistent. A lot of the scenes from Shadowhunters have been so far. They bury him in a Jewish cemetery. He rises from the ground. He goes for Clary because he doesn't even know who Clary is because he's so hungry. He eats the blood. And then if I'm correct, I feel like Simon accepts it very quickly. He's like, okay, well, like, Clary, you saved my life. Thank you. Like, this is what I gotta do now. In the show, I feel like it's very Simon the way he reacts. He's disgusted by himself. He feels like he's a monster. And I feel like that makes total sense because he's grown up being a mundane and he really doesn't want any part of the shadow world. I feel like for the most part, he's trying to get Clary out of it the whole first book. But all of a sudden, he's a vampire and he doesn't know what to do with himself. And it's been driving him crazy because he's been thinking that he's a vampire, but now he actually is this fictional monster from his bedtime stories. And so Clary is like, Simon, you're still my best friend. And he's like, no, I'm disgusting. Like, get away from me. And then he runs away. And I just really like that change to it. That's a change that I can really get behind. I'm just really interested to see where this Simon who hates himself is going to go as compared to the Simon who kind of just moves on and accepts it. That's really it for the discussion. This episode was definitely better. I feel like I had way more positive things to say than I ever had before. Definitely let me know your thoughts. Do you think it was an improvement? Do we share any of the same problems? Do we agree on any of the positives? I would love to know. That is it for this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you soon for a new one. Bye!